Thanks for joining and taking time out of your day to hear what we've got to share around extending your security to cloud. This potentially impacts a number of areas, but one of the more significant areas that organizations are making some hard decisions around is how to protect the fact that all of the SaaS applications and storage repositories are moving to the cloud and consolidating into fewer physical locations and data centers, right? I still like the joke, it's not the cloud, it's just someone else's data center. But thanks for joining, everyone. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone is on mute for the sake of everyone's enjoyment, and just make sure you have a quality experience. If there are any questions or comments, do feel free to post them into the chat, and should we have the time, and we probably will, we can take them at the end. And if there's any follow-ups, etc., feel free to put them in there. Just a little bit about us. We are a kind of a super boutique integrator. We are partnered with Symantec, ServiceNow, and Microsoft. The channel's a very diverse place, and we've carved our niche out, with some big players in the market, and take pride in being very focused, very specialized, and deep subject matter experts on fewer things. As far as Symantec's eyes go, we're a national platinum partner. We hold all of their highest technical distinctions. We deliver services on behalf of Symantec. We deliver Symantec services on behalf of about 15 other resellers in the community. We're largely focused on the Fortune 500. We do have some larger accounts in there that we work with, a few smaller, but a majority of our business is Fortune 500, spread across verticals, significant amount of it in healthcare right now, and retail, hospitality, name it, manufacturing. And just came back from a meeting with a manufacturer here in Michigan, where I'm focused in the Southeast. So it was 60 degrees yesterday, and now I'm watching snow blowing in from the north. We're expected to get 3 to 5 inches. So life in the Great Lakes. The company, though, is headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the west side of the state. So I want to make everyone aware. We've got some great content available on our website. We've got a really good blog. We've got a lot of cool white papers that we've written and we put up there. You can go and download these, or even request a printed copy should you want one. But we've got some good content out there, and a luxury that we have a bit in those respective areas. So the world has changed. My career, man, it started back in the PC era over 20 years ago, where all the data and all the apps were on-prem. The internet gave way to the kind of the cloud 1.0, if you will. Even the users had their role in rogue data spillage. But today we're in the belly of the experience era, and we're really in a hybrid cloud world. I mean, the genie's out of the bottle with cloud adoption. Organizations that were cloud averse a year ago even have flipped around and have been forced to at least become, and I just had a company use this with me this week, cloud curious. We're not cloud averse, we're cloud curious. I thought that was cool. Also, the news is telling us every month that organizations are still scrambling to solve many of the problems of the previous eras, right? So in many cases, it's the basics. There are several influences to this, I believe, but a big one is that this has all been a cumulative, workload for IT and for security, working on different, areas of fashionability, if you will, tools and process-wise. Most of the infrastructure and the tools from the previous two eras, are still a responsibility today, and many of those are still maturing. I also think, security society is largely focused on, the new and exciting flashy toys, next gen this and that, death rays, sounds that kill, and many organizations, unfortunately, are leaving the doors, and windows wide open. So there's a lot being done, I think, to bring things back to basics at the same time. And a lot has changed in the way of the user and IT dilemma, right? Like who's in charge, who's running the roost. When I got into IT and security, we were the kings, and I didn't know it at the time, but there was a revolution by the users underway, and I think we've been seeing the results of that for the last decade, maybe a little bit more. But the previous user definition was pretty simple, whether it was a headquarters or a regional office, going through the typical security stack to the internet, and things were pretty easy. So enter the fashionability of SaaS, and another egress point has almost been created within one that was existing, and we have people bypassing the corporate applications and the security stack in order to get to the applications that they want, or that they are permitted, quote unquote, to use and to leverage for work and or personal. So Gartner's been given some pretty bold predictions on SaaS adoption, but let's just face it, the convenience and value of SaaS is on quite a steamroll. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And even an old school guy like myself, I see the value and the benefit of SaaS applications with regard to integration, doing things that companies couldn't do on their own. Well, the vendors and manufacturers are doing that for us now. And I'm seeing, I think you all are as well, seeing the benefits of that all the time. So we can easily compare, the user IT dilemma to the developer and the gamer world. Control the track or let the gamer play how they want. I mean, that's what we saw with a lot of the games. I'm no longer a gamer. I'm a 46-year-old father of 4, so I don't have time for gaming, but the equivalent is happening in IT. End users expect freedom over how they work, right? So again, I'm even seeing the integration benefits in the things that I use. So we need to rethink the security stack. The outside definitely has become the inside, and the cloud or the internet has become the de facto extended enterprise. The layers of technology used today have a serious blind spot when it comes to the cloud. Your traditional IDS, IPS, firewalls, next gen or not, vulnerability management tools, SIM, DLP, etc. These were all designed to protect assets owned and operated by IT, not third-party tools. Especially when those are hosted outside the organization and accessible virtually anywhere. So there's a new line of technology called cloud access security brokers that have emerged to resolve this and address this. So once you've embraced a cloud services strategy, security by design, that's a little bit bold. I guess I'm just excited to see the risk reduction over time proposition that we learned with DLP to be significantly reduced or simplified. And then, lastly, the bring your own everything, MDM, and, mobile application management. We all saw this coming. We all saw the need for SaaS level security coming. So if we're looking at CASB solutions, these are the traits of leading tools that are out there. So you want to be able to support the organizational use cases, very broadly, and definitely provide the API integration, for majority of the apps that are out there. Integration with the rest of the IT security stack is also very important. You can leverage logs from things that you own today, like firewalls, other gateway tools, sometimes your endpoint security products. And what I like about, the visibility to control dilemma is visibility can transfer to control fairly quickly with the CASB tool. So again, that risk reduction over time proposition is cut down significantly. We want to also have the options to provide that inline protection for non-sanctioned accounts. So like the personal, Gmail, Yahoo, OneDrive personal, etc. We want that forward proxy functionality in a lot of cases too. So again, it comes down to those use cases. A lot of companies that made the jump to a CASB tool a couple years ago may have only had the requirements to have the API integration. They just needed the APIs to get them the visibility and get them some basic functionality. But this is what, the leaders, Forrester, Gartner, IDC, et cetera, this is what they're all saying about traits of leading CASB tools. And, it's still about keeping the bad stuff out and the good stuff in or private. And most of the well-defined cloud apps have got those APIs that can be leveraged for monitoring activity, analyzing the content, and then even applying the controls when needed. And integration, something that's been lacking from a lot of enterprise security. It's getting a lot better in the last 5 years with, SOAP and REST APIs. The consolidation and leveling out of the API world has really made things a lot better. We need to integrate with those on-site web proxies and gateways and even firewalls to help analyze the shadow IT activity, and then encrypt or tokenize the content to enforce the policy. I mean, these are the fundamentals of securing cloud apps comprehensively. You're not getting this level of protection with, from the vendors. They're largely focused on the infrastructure, keeping, protecting your slice of their applications from denial of service attacks, malware outbreaks, business continuity. They're focused on those things. They're not focused on securing the user and securing the information or the assets that are being, moved in and out of those SaaS applications. That's still an organizational responsibility. And then DLP definitely evolving due to cloud adoption. If you look back to email's been the primary vector to solve with DLP. At least it was the first. There's definitely companies that leverage the full suite. I don't mean to diminish the rest of it, but email and web was the first thing that most organizations solve for. And even that's kind of changing the game a little bit, because email became, the de facto way of sharing and collaborating. But this is giving way from attached files, which we are now inspecting in a lot of cases, to links embedded in those messages. So this means that the problem is moved, or there's a new gap in what we solve for in yesterday's priority. At least half of the orgs that we work with that are solving DLP are building off the benefits obtained in some sort of data classification initiative, right? And that's to basically take the game beyond keyword searchability. Having that contextual analysis allows for advanced detection capabilities and allows us to treat our assets like currency, protect the most valuable, first, and prioritize on that, and then work downward. So this is kind of following in the footsteps of good information protection, and a good CASB provider definitely applies these similar traits and techniques. Good pre-work data-wise, classification as well, I'd add here, combined with advanced detection. And in the case of CASB, we're really looking at some really cool smoke and mirror data science type stuff that gives you a stable pedestal to enforce that policy. So rather than just block cloud apps like we saw a year or two ago, instead of block that behavior, just encrypt encrypt specific information, right? And this is where you can get it right with regard to response, something that many DLP customers experience that weren't able to be aggressive for whatever reason in defining the effective and automated response. We can predefine key responses for cloud services and authorize your workforce in what they can transfer and with what apps, and kind of do this out of the gate, right? So depending on where you're at with your adoption, again, we can reduce the pause or the hesitation that we typically see when we enable business and then figure out, all right, what did we now put at risk? Now it's become a game to try to chase that. We can do that a little bit faster here in the case of protecting SaaS, which again is very refreshing. So DLP, once again, that policy can extend into the cloud and give us give us a much easier pathway than what we saw over the last decade. So a lot of folks are familiar with CASB tools. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Rather, we're kind of transitioning a lot of our discussions that we're having with organizations around, all right, how do we get started? What do we do? What are the kind of the levels that we should be considering on moving through and navigating through them? Can you help us, better understand that? What do you see, productive organizations doing? So we work with our consultants to come up with all right, what is the overall life cycle of this? And then what is a reasonable way to come up with a model to follow along the maturity? So before we get into that, there's a few things that we want to consider. It's, again, the security versus productivity, right? A lot of manufacturing companies, I find, are still very user-centric, which isn't a bad thing, but it often comes at a price of protection or security. Whereas when I talk to a lot of finance companies of late, they're bringing security back to the forefront. A good example that I always like to mention is the work stream versus play stream. So a highly virtualized financial organization, and they have a VM for work and they have a work VM for play, and that's what you use. And it's kind of interesting in this era of experience, user-centric culture. They are swinging back the other way. So we'll see what happens, and if other companies follow in that line. While we work on security awareness, and that being a longer proposition, I do think it's time for some controls. But we need to look at what the level of cloud adoption is among the departments and the employees. How mature is your endpoint management or your systems management? What's the efficacy there? How are unmanaged devices, accessing cloud apps that are ultimately, your cloud apps, right? How valuable or sensitive is the data being stored and used in those services? And, what's the organization's risk tolerance level? So the desired control or compliance related information, what's the level of those being used in the cloud services? A lot of global companies are scrambling to solve GDPR at the moment. So definitely regulatory compliance becomes very important. So again, we mustn't pretend that all of this happens right out of the gate. When I buy a CASB tool, I can't just turn this all on and enforce policy and do all this, advanced stuff. But what we do recommend doing is starting with the outcomes in a level 1, and then working down that as appropriate, your tolerance of risk, what your goals are, what your requirements are, and kind of bringing all that together. Again, we saw something very similar with DLP. And in fact, many security tools, that we work with start by establishing some sort of beachhead and roll along a given maturity scale. So there's 3 pieces to this maturity model. So level 1, there's 2 pieces to this, 2 components. It starts with discover the cloud services that are in use and the specific actions that people are taking within those services. And in this case, the organization needs to move beyond just knowing what apps are in use and who is accessing, who is using those apps and what employees are doing in them. Second piece would be then to rate the compliance level of each service in use. So when it comes to security, not all cloud apps are created equal. Some have a reputation of having, hijacked user accounts. Others have different, issues or what have you. And companies are starting to build, reputations around that. Symantec has got the, several aspects of intelligence that they use for this, but basically, companies would otherwise have no way of assessing the level of risk with a given application. So knowing that security compliance rating is very important to prioritize which apps you permit, which ones are going to be adopted by the organization and potentially standardized in order to meet the company's requirements. So getting into second level now, level 2. So this has got 3 pieces to it. First level has 2, second level has 3. Identify and classify the data. So it's that classification exercise that I was alluding to. Classify the data that's sensitive or compliance related. So we should definitely know at this point what types of data each business group is using. How sensitive or valuable are those data types? Who should be using the data? Or how should they be using it? These are all things that we need to get to the bottom of and better understand in the beginning of the second maturity phase. So this will give us a complete and accurate classification of all the data because it's very foundational to creating the right data protection policy. Again, treat it like currency. Next piece of level 2, map the flow of sensitive information across all cloud services. So we should know exactly how sensitive data is being stored, accessed, or changed in cloud apps as part of the organization's, normal business processes, right? So this is just normal stuff. Just need to figure it out and better understand what the real risk is there. Okay, last piece of level 2, and this would be to equip the application owners in the business to investigate, make exceptions, deal with incidents without getting IT involved. Now, this could be a security team. This could be different business unit stakeholders. It depends on the company and how they're set up and what what the cross-functional team is going to look like to support this technology. But if an employee violates the data protection policy, alert the right people, and those people definitely vary. And we want to equip the business application owners to ideally solve as much of this problem as themselves as they can. We can't always rely on IT or DLP teams. A key part of any successful DLP initiative is to get the business involved and get them engaged and make them a part of the group or part of the team. So level 3, level 1 had 2 components, level 2 has 3, and level 3 has 4 components. And here's where we bring the compliance and bring the controls into full force. So control the type of data that can be stored and used in cloud services. Many organizations out there, they need to bring that granular DLP permission, to the cloud and control, right? So a key indicator of a mature cloud security system is being able to keep the sensitive data locked down while allowing less sensitive data to move freely. So, accepted or denied. Second level of maturity level 3 is to control the access to cloud services based on device health, location, time of day. So we're getting a lot more granular here, right? And we're definitely at a point where this is where your opportunity to get more precise control of cloud app usage. So it's pretty neat that you've got this kind of granularity here. But you got to be able to ensure that the sensitive data in the cloud apps is only accessed by the right people who need it, right? They must also get to a point where they can ensure that people aren't using insecure, unpatched devices to access company cloud apps. Definitely a later maturity phase, but a very important one. So this is the policy enforcement piece. This is where we get into detecting and blocking actions that are clear violations of data protection policy for information stored in the cloud. So now we should know what shadow IT actions are being performed by people. And we need to be able to set up and automatically enforce actions and permissions based on any criteria that the organization should choose, whether it be data owner, type of data, it could be employee seniority level. That's an unusual, but one that I've heard of recently. There's a number of different examples there. So last piece of level 3 is to be able to detect unusual access or actions that stray from the baseline of behavior on any given device, user group or user. So this is, you hear it referred to as UBA, user behavior analysis, and this is a potential final phase of the 3-level maturity plan, and it's something that most organizations work up to. You can't just turn this on out of the gate. You basically are setting granular baselines for behavior and seeing who, when, what, where, how people are deviating from that. So, the behavior side is like the epitome of cloud security and gives you the opportunity to leverage something that's hard to do within the 4 walls, right? And then the knowledge about that user behavior will be acquired. And when this is implemented, it could be invaluable for maintaining, a really progressive cloud security strategy. Really neat stuff. It's kind of the tit for the tat in the era of experience that we let people, do your thing, if you will, but we're understanding, the behavior side of things. So it's very, very appropriate given the era of experience. So some conclusions here, and we'll bring us home. We believe we're in this era, where the biggest challenge is balancing the protection for the company and the organization, as well as the productivity for the users. The outside, again, has become the inside, and there's a new category of security tools emerging, and they're called Cloud Access Security Brokers, or CASB. Knowing where you're at in the adoption phase, right? So those that were cloud averse, again, are becoming cloud curious. The genie's out of the bottle. Embrace your opportunity to leverage the scale and the efficiency of software as a service. We should be looking at every computer as a mobile device now. We've almost gone back to thin clients, back where my career started. Support the use cases broadly for what you need, and there are quite a few out there. And it all starts with that API level integration, to support all the apps out there that you plan to sanction for the organization. And if you don't know which are risky today, get an evaluation or a shadow IT assessment in order to see what's going on there. And then compare that evidence to what you think is happening and leverage that to prioritize your resolution. Connect us back to your DLP program and give it a physical while you're there, or use this cloud opportunity to work backward within your four walls, or aspire to bring some security by design, if you will, yuck, to your use of SaaS today. So I've seen a couple companies that never got DLP right within the four walls. All their data and all their workloads moved to the cloud within 18 months. And now they're going to set up CASB to solve all their DLP problems, because that's where their game is moved. That's where the problem is moved. So interesting approach there. I have only seen a couple of companies leverage it that way, but definitely an interesting use case. So I'll take a couple questions here. I noticed a couple of them came into the queue. So the first one is there an integration with other tools other than DLP? So if I understand this correctly, integration with other tools, I'm assuming we're talking about other aspects of the security stack, and there definitely is integration there. So there's integration with firewalls, there's integration with web gateways, there is integrations coming with endpoint security. So I have your email address here. I can send you some links and some things that I found out there in the community that pertain to that topic. Other integrations with Symantec CASB tool definitely can get you that. Next question: are you seeing folks trade CASBs? So I assume we're talking about. I may have had Sky High, but now I want to look at Netscope, or I had Sky High and I want to go to Symantec. That's definitely something I'm seeing. I think the SaaS adoption is happening, rapidly to a lot of the analysts' point, but I think the adoption of CASB is going a little bit slower than we expected. And that kind of goes back to the pause or the hesitation that we've seen in every era of IT. But I have seen companies that basically had API level functionality from a CASB tool, and then they did a swap out because they needed to go to, having like a proxy in the cloud type functionality, right? I've also seen where a business unit may have bought a CASB tool for a department, and then the organization decided to make a more strategic maneuver, and then maybe wanted to go with something that was, it could have been a price thing, it could have been a cost issue, it could have been consolidating on something that has another integration point. There's a number of different factors there, but I have seen swap outs based on, we had a rogue CASB deployment, a business unit was trying to do the right thing and at least get some level of visibility into what was going on, or maybe they had a regulatory requirement with a specific set of business processes, and now they want to, really lean into this with a corporate-wide strategy, and that's often a good time to to trade out maybe a previous tool for another one that meets the full organization's needs, suits all different use cases. So with that, thanks so much for attending. Really appreciate you guys spending 40 minutes with me today. Hope this was helpful and useful. If you have any questions, feel free to stuff them into the chat, or you can shoot us an email. I'd encourage you to go out there and follow our blog, check out our social feeds, and stay engaged with us there if you can. Thanks so much. We'll see you on another ITS webinar. Take care and have a great day.